Okay guys, we're going over the mini lesson from 12.4 of 2015. Right here we have secant divided by tangent plus cotangent equals sine. Okay. On the top, secant, I already know what that is. We can look on the identity sheet. We know that secant is 1 over cosine. So I'm not going to worry about it right now. But however, on the bottom, I have tangent plus cotangent. That actually needs to be simplified before we can flip it as the denominator and multiply it by the top. So I'm going to go ahead and work out the bottom. So I have tangent, which is sine over cosine, plus cotangent, which is cosine over sine. Now right here I'm adding with fractions and my bottoms don't match. So right now we should be thinking cross multiply. So I do sine times sine, that gives me sine squared. Bring down the sine from the middle, that plus sign. Cosine times cosine is cosine squared. And that is all over the bottom, which is cosine times sine. So I'm just going to write cosine sine side by side. Now if we look at the top right here, we should see this on the identity sheet. Sine squared plus cosine squared, that equals 1. So this is actually 1 over cosine sine. Now I'm done simplifying the numerator. Now I'm ready to bring down the original numerator, that secant, and actually flip and multiply. So when I'm going to actually do it over here. Secant, I can write as 1 over cosine. And I know that that secant function is on top of 1 over cosine sine. Okay? Now remember, when we divide with fractions, you always take the bottom, flip it, and then multiply it by the top. So I'm going to do cosine sine all over 1. Now I have a 1 on top and bottom. I can cross those out. Now I have cosine on top and bottom. I can cross those out, and that gives me sine, which is what I needed to get. Okay? All right. Give me one quick second, and let me go ahead and set up the second problem. Okay, so right here we have cosine minus cosecant all over sine minus secant. All right, right here we're actually going to have to do quite a bit of math because we're going to have to work out the top and the bottom. Okay, so in this, over here I'm going to do top, and over here I'm going to do bottom. And then when I finish, I'll see if I have room in the middle so we can work everything out. Okay, so I have cosine. We remember, never change cosine or sine. So that's cosine over 1 minus cosecant, which is 1 over sine. I'm going to go ahead and work the top out all together while I got you right here. So I'm subtracting. Bottoms do not match. So I have cosine times sine. That is just cosine sine. Minus, because I got to bring down the sign from the middle, 1 times 1 is 1. Okay, and that is all over sine. Okay, because bottom times bottom gives me the bottom. Okay, that's it for the top right here. Now let's move over and do the bottom. So I have sine. Remember, never change sine or cosine. So that is just sine over 1 minus secant, which is 1 over cosine. Now I'm subtracting. So in my head, I should be thinking cross multiply if the bottoms don't match. So sine times cosine is sine cosine. Bring down the sine from the middle. 1 times 1 is 1 all over the bottom. 1 times cosine is cosine. Okay. Now I have my top over here and I have my bottom. Remember, when you divide by fractions, always flip the bottom. So I'm going to bring the bottom over here, but I'm going to flip it. So I'm going to put cosine on top. I'm going to put sine cosine minus 1 on bottom, because you have to flip the bottom and then multiply. Now I have cosine sine minus 1. Sine cosine minus 1. The sine and cosines, they're in a different order, but remember, order does not matter when you're multiplying. So I can cross those out, and I'm left with cosine over sine, which I can look at my identity sheet with cotangent, and I know that gives me cosine over sine, and now they give me the same thing, and now I'm done with this problem. Okay. Let me set up the next one for you. Okay. So now I have sine plus tangent all over cosine plus 1 equals tangent. Okay. For the bottom, remember, we never changed sine and cosine, so there's no need in me doing cosine plus 1 because it's not an identity, and I'm going to end up with the same thing that I already have. So I'm just going to work out the numerator. So sine, remember, we never changed. Sine is just sine over 1 plus tangent, which is sine over cosine. Okay, I'm adding, and I don't have the same denominator, so I need to cross multiply. So sine times cosine is sine cosine. Bring down the sine from the middle. 1 times sine is sine all over cosine. Okay. All right, if you look at what I have, this is the top. If you look at this and you look at cosine plus 1, there's nothing that can cross out. So I need to do a little bit of simplifying right here. If I look in this top right here, notice that I have a sine in common with both of them. When we have something in common, we need to pull that out. So I'm going to pull out my sine, then write my parentheses. So look at your first one. You have sine and cosine, but I pulled the sine out. Okay, it's called dividing. I divided the sine out, so I'm left with just a cosine. Bring down the sine from the middle. I have 1 sine on the other side of the plus sign. I pulled it out, so I have that understood 1. That is right there, all over cosine. And notice this is still the numerator, and this is all over cosine plus 1 that I brought down from the original problem. Now I can flip the bottom and multiply, and the cosine plus 1s should cross out. So I can take the bottom, bring it up here, and I can put a 1 on top of it, cosine plus 1. Now I have a cosine plus 1 on top. I'm sorry, cosine plus 1 on bottom and a cosine plus 1 on top. Now I can cross them out, and I'm left with a sine on top, because sine times 1 gives me sine all over cosine. And now I can look at tangent. Tangent is also sine over cosine, and now they both match. Okay. All right. We have one more problem on the mini lesson. Let me go ahead and write that down for you. Okay, I have sine plus cosine all over secant plus cosecant. So I need to work this out. If I tried to add sine plus cosine, I'm not going to go anywhere because the bottoms are the same then I would go straight across and I would get the same thing that I already have. So I'm just going to work out the bottom first, okay? So secant is going to be 1 over cosine, bring down the sign from the middle. Cosecant is going to be 1 over sine. Now I'm adding, the bottoms do not match, so I need to cross multiply. 1 times sine is sine, bring down the sign from the middle. Cosine times 1 is cosine. That is all over bottom times bottom, which is cosine times sine. Okay, sine plus cosine, that's not 1. They have to be squared for it to equal the trig identity. So this is the bottom. So I'm going to leave sine plus cosine right here. I'm going to write it over here. So I have sine plus cosine. And I'm going to put a little understood 1 right here because we know everything has an understood 1 on bottom. And instead of dividing, I'm going to put a multiplying sign. And I'm going to take this bottom and I'm going to flip it, because we always flip the denominator and then multiply. So now I have cosine sine all over sine plus cosine. And now I have a sine plus cosine on top and bottom. I can cross those out, and that leaves me with cosine times sine, which is exactly what I needed. All right, that was it for 12.4.15 on the mini lesson.